everyone, what's up? This is Simon and welcome to another tutorial. This time we will talk about passing data to different routes in an Ionic 4 application, and this isn't actually a hard topic, but the migration from Ionic 3 to Ionic 4 is very tricky, especially for those of you that have read all the tutorials where you should use an ID and then resolve the ID from the next page, and you're like, what? I want to pass my object to that page like I did before. So for all of you, here are 3 solutions for your problem. But first of all, I've started a blank new Ionic app and created a new page details so we can show some of the pushing stuff, and then also for another use case created 2 services like this. Once you got this, your app should look like this and we can go ahead. So what we want to do is, as I said, cover 3 different ways to do it. And first of all, we will add 3 buttons to use those things right inside our app. So we will use something with query params. So add the functionality as well. Then we want to use it with a service. Sounds cool. And finally, we want to open it with a state. So we will see what that is as well. Also, we might want to have a little constructor in here, and there we go. Also, for the details page, I will just bring in some code because that's really not the focus of this tutorial to write some HTML. Basically, we got a little header area with a back button, just the default stuff up there, and then an ion card. Can we format this a bit? Thanks. An ion card with a header, title, subtitle. So as you can see, we rely on some data in that page, and we want that data to come from our homepage. A super typical use case. You got a list of whatever objects that you maybe already got from the server. You want to display the details for a person or whatever is in your list, and you don't want to make another request to the server. So you simply want to pass the information you already got in the list to the next page. And that's exactly what we want to do. So we can save everything, but this file, we don't really need this. So let's dive into number 1, using query params. This is actually not the recommended way, and I just want to show it how you could do it. This is very hacky, and again, I wouldn't recommend it, but let's cover it. It's a bit like these hacker stuff things, right? Where they say, okay, that's how you hack the nuclear plant in Russia, but please don't do it, please not. Anyhow, here we got the object that we want to pass to the next page, so just an example, of course. And then we, of course, need the private router in here, or the router, as I have learned, which is more common in the United States as far as I know. So I will try to stick to router. Maybe one day this will work. So what we want to do is, before calling this router navigate, before we do this, we want to create some navigation extras that we can pass to this. And it works by having, first of all, the details route in here. I think, yes, that was automatically added to our app routing. And then actually you can pass in something more right here. So if you take a look at this, you see of the type navigation extras. So let's use the type navigation extras like this. And in here we can define quite a few things. But the interesting part right now is the query params. Let's say special whatever. So these things will now be added to our navigation path at the query params. So if we do it like this, and we use the first button, which is open with query params, just take a look at the route. We see details and then the question mark, special, whatever, just like you use from query params in any other URL. And from the next page, we can now resolve this information. So let's go to the details page, and in the constructor, we will first of all need the route, which is the activated route, and then the private router, And there we go. So we've done this before by forgetting the ID of the active route, and now we just want to get the query params, and we subscribe to this to always receive the latest version once we're on that page, and then we can check if we actually got them and if those contain the special field, because we use our page now in different ways, and in other cases it will then crash and I don't want to comment the code out, so that's why I'm using this. And then we got the data of the type any, and we can set our data to the params special. Okay, so this should work pretty good. We can add a console log as well for the params. So there we go. But right now, of course, we're only sending a little string. And actually, that's also a use case that is okay. So we get to the page, we got the query params, and we can resolve them to whatever. Now, if you got an object, you can also pass this, but not as easy as before. What you can do is going ahead with JSON stringify and then using your object. This will make the object to or convert it to a string. And then in the details page, you can simply go ahead with JSON parse. So simply reversing the operation. And the result of this is that first of all, you go to the page, you build a string, and then as you can see, that's the string. And then you revert it back to an object, so you get everything in here. Pretty cool, pretty easy, works as expected. The only problem with this solution is what you can see in here. And that's also the reason why I don't recommend this. Although if your app might be only running as an Ionic, as a native application on iOS or Android, users will not see the URL bar. Still, I would know as a developer that we got this ugly mess in the path, and that's not really cool. So that's why I say this is a pretty hacky solution, and I wouldn't recommend to use it like this. The next two solutions I will present you are actually something I would recommend. So both of them are cool so far. So solution number 2 to the problem is using a service and resolving the data. And the resolving part is actually just a bit more sugar on top of the idea. So our data service now looks like this. Just an idea, you could structure it however you want. Basically keeping reference or keeping track of some data in a service, and then from outside setting the data and getting the data by an ID. It's actually what is recommended in general already, so simply passing an ID to the page and then resolving the ID. But now we're not making an additional network request, but simply storing it inside our service. And one thing we need to do for this as well is to create another path. So let's make the details path like this, so we can pass an ID to the path as well. Okay, if we're now going to use this, we can simply go to the home page, and for our open details with service, we would say we would first of all have to inject the private data service, and then before we make the transition to the next route, we say data service set data for whatever ID. Let's say the ID is 42, and we save the data. This is no async operation. You could persist this by using the Ionic storage as well in the background and really storing this result. So you can later also implement reloading on the page, but for now we will keep it simple. So we just got it in the cache here. And then we say router navigate by URL, and we want to details 42, so the page is able to resolve this. Now normally you would now go to the page, the details page, you would subscribe to the whatever changes, then you get 42, then you call the service and you get the data. The problem with this is that the data is then undefined in the beginning. That's also the reason why we added this ngIf data up here. So if you leave this out, you normally got to use the save navigation operator everywhere, because otherwise Angular would give you an error message. The solution to this problem is actually the resolver. And the resolver has one functionality. I'll bring this just in. So the resolver should resolve something. Sounds pretty reasonable, right? And the resolver will now take care of doing exactly what we normally would have in the details page. So it will get the ID from the route information param map and then call the service to get the data. And now we can apply the resolver function to our route in here. And we go ahead by saying resolve, and then whatever you want to name the data, special, and then the data resolver service and this. So now whenever we navigate to this path, the resolver will catch the ID, resolve the data, and already inject it before the page is even loaded. So that means we arrive on the details page, and we can simply inside the ng on init ask if this route snapshot data special is set, and in that case simply set it to this data. So now we could even, did we know we still got this, but let's see if it actually works first of all. Of course the problem was only with Ionic Surf, so now the open works. The path looks great, so details 42, and we're able to resolve the information. And now we would even be able to remove this, because the data will be, as I said, resolved upfront, and once we arrive on the page, the data is already there. I hope this works now, otherwise that would look pretty bad. But it works, of course. So that's a cool way to remove all of the ngIfs or the Elvis operators from your page using the resolver. But in general, the second approach simply includes using a service that keeps track of the data, so setting the data there before you make the navigation and then getting the data from there after the navigation. Okay, and now to tip number 3, which is using extras state. And this is something introduced with Angular 7.2. And because we are lucky, we are actually using Angular 7.2. And I discovered this while looking for a solution to this problem, which a lot of you had. And it turns out somebody implemented something for this. So what we can do as well is using again the first approach, but this time simply using a state in here. And then let's call this user, and then we pass the user object. And now we can pass the whole object as it is inside the state to the next page. We don't have to change anything else, so that's all we need. And to resolve the data, we can actually go back into the query params subscribe block, and in here simply check if this router is it already included. No, not data, but simply the router. Get current navigation extras dot state. So if this one is set, and in your case, maybe if you only use one solution, you don't have to check for it. But in that state, or in that case, we can set it to state.user, which is what we defined right here. So if we now reload the application and use our third button, we see that we're back on the page with the full object displayed, no ID passed, everything happened in the background, and this is basically the same like you had with Ionic 3. But a little word of warning, doing this will, after the navigation, store the object in the local location cache, whatever, from Angular. So if you do this a lot with big objects, maybe your performance might decrease. So try this out at your own. I definitely recommend also the second way, which is very clean, using the data service, perhaps even add Ionic storage on top of it. But basically, those two solutions could fix your problem you have right now with migrating your Ionic 3 app. And I hope, of course, you enjoyed this video. Like always, if you did, hit the like button and also the subscribe button. I also got another type of videos on this channel, so definitely make sure to check them out. Check out the other Ionic videos, and most important, subscribe to this channel to receive all further videos. So have a great day, do some great coding, and happy coding.